Hi there, guys. Now for this session, we're going to talk about the economics of education, and I'm your presenter for today, Mr. Ariel Loñosa. So let's talk about first the law of supply and demand in education. So when we say law of supply and demand, this means that the law of supply and demand is a theory that explains the interaction between the sellers of a resource or a goods and the buyers for that goods or resources. And it is also the relationship between the price of a given goods or products and the willingness of people to either buy or sell it. So that is what we call the law of supply and demand. Also, it says that as the price increases, people are willing to supply more, of course, so they can get income or profit, and demand less, and vice versa when the price falls. So meaning when the price becomes low, then the demand is lesser. Okay. So we have the diagram here. So the diagram shows the insight from the demand and supply analysis, which how the people coordinate their decisions by communicating through the market price. So we have here the explanation for that in terms of the equilibrium of supply and demand. So it says that the supply and demand works together to determine the market price of item. Knowing how these basic principles will work and understand on the economics um, effects. So the equilibrium price is where the producers are supplying the exact amount of goods or service demanded by the consumers. So any price higher or lower than this will cause fluctuation in the supply and demand or inflation. So the realization there, economics underpins all human endeavors at its core. So in the economics of study, how the people, businesses, and societies utilize resources. So whether deciding how much to spend on goods and services, how to use our personal resources of time and energy, or where to allocate investments. And understanding the economic fundamentals is important for making sound financial decisions. So it's very important that we know how the market um, is doing in terms of our financial decisions. If we're going to invest in this particular company or whatever, so we should know the marketplace or the range in terms of the market. Now, we have the salary scale of public school teachers in the Philippines. By the way, in terms of the this supply and demand, so how this actually affects the education system. So as we all know, if we have a problem in the supply and demand, then the education will also suffer. So in the education sector, it is important that they should know the status of the supply and demand since it is a part of our economy. And it really affects the education system in terms of um, the different resources that we need in the education, like school supplies, financial expenses, or education expenses, and many more. So it's really affecting the education system as we face challenges in those areas. That's why it's very important that we have this idea about the law of supply and demand. Now let's talk about the salary scale of public school teachers in the Philippines. So under the salary standardization law, um, for teachers, so there is a grants salary increase for the government employees, including teachers and nurses. This was started January 1st of 2020. And in an entry level teacher with a salary of 20,754 under the salary grade 11. Now, they start receiving a monthly pay of 22,316 pesos, or an increase of 1,562 this 2020. And from 2021 to 2023, the entry level teacher salary will increase to 23,877, and then 25,439 and 27,000 respectively, as they continue with the increase. So here is the table for the salary grade, the basic salary, and then the first tranche, which is 2020 already given, and the second tranche 2021 this year, and then the third tranche will be 2022, and the final and fourth tranche will be 2023. So you will be able to see the increase in their salaries. So let's talk about the teacher 2. So salary grade 11, and then the basic salary is 20,754, and then last 2020 they have increase. So from 20,000 became 22,316. Second tranche, this 2021, it will be 23,877, and 2022 will increase to 25,439, and 2023 next year, the other year rather, it will become 27,000. So we can see the increase of their salaries. This is until master teacher 4. All right, so we already know the salary in terms of the teachers. Now let's talk about the effects of the pandemic in the public and private education in the Philippines. So here are the different or several problems in education during this pandemic. So first, we have financial issues to support their online classes, technological knowledge in using the online platform. So some of the students are not yet familiar in using the online platforms for online classes. And the first one, financials. There is some big problems in terms of the financial, especially if they're going to buy gadgets or computer laptop for their online class. And then security of using the internet for online learning. So we have issues about that. Recently, there was an issue of intruder that actually entered in an online class of the junior high school. So it's very important that the teachers should give a very important um, instructions to the students to not give the links to anybody who are not part of the class. And then the monitoring the learners during class hours. So they should always monitor the learners, especially during the online classes, because it's very important that they have this attendance during online class to make sure that all the learners will attend the class. And assessment in checking the retained knowledge. So there's always an outcome in order for them to know if the learners is actually learning in the lessons, especially if it's online class, because not all of them are very much attentive, so we don't know what they are doing on the other place during the online class. So it's very important that we should check their knowledge if they learn something from it. So in general, education system is facing the challenges this pandemic in the implementation of the mode of learning, either for basic or higher education, both private and public schools. This is a big opportunity to recreate a curriculum for better education in a situation like this. So probably this is just a trial since they did not prepare regarding the pandemic. But then again, it's important that we have learned something from the situation, so we cannot do the same mistakes in the future. So let's talk about now the economy of scale applied in educational setup. So achieving economies of scale in higher education. So in terms of creating economy of scale and critical for today's colleges and universities, we have the different conditions in order to succeed in the institution in achieving the scale. Now, what does it take to successfully scale? So the first one, we have the internal alignment. So expanding the reach of the institution beyond the traditional realm. So without this alignment, sabi dito, internal conflict will almost certainly sabotage the effort because it even launches. So there's a problem if they don't have the internal alignment. So it should always align in the educational setup in terms of the economy. Second, there should be a strong leadership. So a leader who are committed to provide across the institution to make this happen. So if one of these flinch, the project will certainly fail. So if there's no good leader and proper management, then it's not going to be successful. Third, strong management. So strong management is critical to achieving economies of scale. It's very different from leadership. Okay, so when you say management, this actually talks about the outcome performance. In leadership, this is how they manage the people. And then four, strategic programming. So the institution has a right program, should have a right programs that can be delivered at scale, and should always connected with the economy. And then so those are the different successfully the economy of scale rather. Now let's talk about the success and how this scale will be successful. So while are important, so you should focus on the last point of the particular in the institution being successful in scaling their entire institution, and the right program at the right time and place should be provided, right? And that will actually help the institution to be successful. And even if you are not on the right track, you can get run over if you just sit there. This according to Reuters. And the institution will have a higher probability of success. Now, it says that the education sector has the highest budget among all other sectors of the government. So let's talk about the funding of school education. So the mechanism through which school funding is governed, distributed and monitored play a key role in ensuring the resources that are directed to where they can make the most difference. So it's the overall funding matters, strategies to in order for them to allocate and master resources to learners that are needs or least important. So we should always focus on the learners' um, benefits whenever they fund the school. It's not only about the money that they are getting, but the learnings that the learners will acquire at the end. And also, as most school funding comes from public budgets, developing effective mechanism to allocate this funding among others important policy concern for governments. And alongside the quality and equity objectives that are at the heart of schooling. So this is the consideration why the education sector have the highest budget among all other government sectors. And then it is also mandated in the 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines under Article 14, Section 5. So it states that the highest budgetary priority to education in ensuring that teaching will attract and retain its great rightful share of the best available talents through adequate remuneration and other means of job satisfaction and fulfillment. So it really says and mandated on the government policy of 1987 Constitution. Now let's talk about the administration of school financing. So the state responsibility for the support of education. So this part, in terms of the administration of the school financing, so they really need to put effort into it. So also the sources of the revenues. So sources of government income for education. So it includes the taxes, tuition fees, matriculation fees, and other fees. The sources of government income for education, we have rentals, land grants and donations, voluntary contributions, and the special fees. Now, for the support for elementary education, so we have the local governments can actually support the elementary education. It pertains to the different support that they can give. This is according to the Educational Act of 1940. And we also have the support for public secondary schools. So says here the tuition fee to be charged should not be less than 80 a year, 50% of the 10% real established tax. But now it's free for the public schools. So there's no payment that they need to get from the students. And the support for public secondary, yeah, that's it. We also have system used by the local government. So the first budget is prepared by the Treasurer Office. Proposed budget is signed by the official concerned, submitted to the municipal council. Once approved, a resolution of the local government is signed, and the budget approves, it becomes legal invalid. Otherwise, it does not become operative. So this is how they have the budget coming from the local governments. Now, in terms of the school setting, financial management has three key segments. So the first one is the student fees management. It involves the create fees, schedule fees, check fees, the default, check fees, schedule, and fee refunds, fees reports, good students wise. We have the staff payroll management, general payslip reports. So definitely talks about salary. School account management, we have the financial reports and the transaction management. And also in terms of the establishing private elementary and secondary schools, these are the considerations or factors. The location of the establishment, financial capabilities, the funding ability, number of families living in the area, teachers hiring, training and development, the educational expenses, permits, and other legal obligations. So we should see that uh, all those things as part of in order for us to um, establish a private elementary secondary school. So those are the things that we should consider. And then there should be an initial research before doing this kind of business, and then proper coordination with the local government also, and leadership and management skills is very important for the decision making. So these are my resources in this particular subject. There you go. So that's it for my presentation in the economics of education. So thanks so much for listening. I hope you learned something from it. If you have questions, clarification, and suggestions, we will appreciate it. Thank you.